Something interesting happens to many of us as we grow older. We tidy the house, put a few things back where they belong, maybe clear the kitchen table, and for a little while, everything feels calm again. The room feels lighter. The surfaces are clear. You even tell yourself, all right, I'm going to keep it this way. But then a few weeks pass, and somehow the clutter quietly returns. A stack of papers appears on the chair. Something sits on the kitchen counter just for now. A drawer that used to close easily suddenly refuses to cooperate. And you stand there looking around the room wondering, how did this happen again? Now, I've asked that same question more times than I can count. And over the years, I've had a lot of time to think about it. Because I've helped friends sort through clutter, I've watched family members struggle with it, and of course, I've seen it happen in my own home too. And little by little, I began noticing something. Clutter itself usually isn't the real problem. Most of the time, it grows out of the quiet habits of everyday life. The small decisions we make when we're tired, when we're busy, when we tell ourselves we'll deal with something later. And once I started paying attention to those habits, something interesting began to happen. The clutter stopped returning the way it used to. Not because I suddenly became more disciplined, but because the habits underneath it had quietly changed. And there are a few simple ideas behind that shift. One of the first things I discovered took me many years to understand. For a long time, I believed the answer was simply organizing better. Clean more, sort more, try harder. And if you've ever spent a Saturday afternoon decluttering, you probably know the feeling. You open a drawer, you start pulling things out, you move things from one place to another, and after an hour or two, the room somehow looks worse than when you started. I remember one afternoon opening a kitchen drawer that had slowly turned into what people sometimes call a catch-all drawer. You probably know the kind. The place where things quietly collect over the years. Inside were rubber bands, old batteries, bits of string, paper clips, and somehow 4 vegetable peelers. 4. Now, I can promise you no one really needs 4 vegetable peelers. And the funny thing was, I didn't even remember buying most of them. They had simply appeared over time, little decisions made on busy days. But as I sat there looking at that drawer, something else became obvious. I was trying to sort through everything while feeling tired and irritated. My mind felt scattered, and the drawer looked exactly the same. That's when something finally clicked for me. Before trying to reset the house, it often helps to reset yourself. These days, if I feel overwhelmed by a messy room, I don't rush into organizing. Sometimes I step outside for a few minutes and get a little fresh air. Sometimes I sit quietly with a cup of tea, just long enough for the mind to slow down. Because once the mind settles, the room stops feeling like a problem that needs to be attacked, and the decisions become much easier. You pick something up and think, I don't really need this anymore. And the process suddenly feels lighter. Over time, I began noticing something else too. The way we talk to ourselves plays a bigger role than we realize. I've heard people say things like, I've always been messy, or I'm just not good at organizing. One gentleman once told me, at my age, I think this is just how I am. But the story we quietly repeat about ourselves often shapes what we expect to happen. If we believe we can't change, then every time clutter appears, it feels like confirmation. But when you look back honestly, most clutter didn't appear because someone was careless. It appeared during busy seasons of life. Years of raising children, years of working long hours, years when the house had to function more than it had to look perfect. During those years, things accumulate, and that's completely understandable. Later in life, something changes. The pace slows down a little. The house becomes quieter, and suddenly we have the space to notice things we didn't see before. And sometimes that's when we realize we can build new habits.
Many people think the solution to clutter is more discipline, more effort, more determination. But what often works better are small systems, little routines that quietly guide daily life. For example, one habit I follow now is very simple. Before going to bed each evening, I take a few minutes to put a few things back where they belong. Just a few minutes, nothing dramatic. but those few minutes prevent small piles from quietly growing into something overwhelming. Another small practice is keeping the balance steady. If something new enters the home, something else leaves. It doesn't have to be strict or complicated. It's simply a way of reminding ourselves that space has limits. And there's another small rule that has saved me from buying many unnecessary things. Whenever I feel tempted to buy something, I give it a day, sometimes two, and more often than not, the desire disappears by the next afternoon. It's amazing how many things seem important in the moment and completely unnecessary the next day. As the years go by, another idea becomes more and more important: limits. When we're younger, we don't always notice how much we accumulate. But after many years, something changes. More belongings begin to feel heavier, not just physically, mentally. More things mean more decisions, more surfaces to clean, more drawers to manage. I remember opening a closet one afternoon and realizing half the clothes inside were things I hadn't worn in years. Some of them didn't even fit anymore. And I remember thinking to myself, why am I still taking care of these? These days, I let the space decide. If my clothes fit comfortably in one closet, that's enough. If a drawer is full, that becomes the limit. Those quiet boundaries protect the home from filling up again. Of course, the hardest things to deal with aren't always useless things. Sometimes they're the meaningful ones. Old photographs, letters, children's drawings, gifts from people we love. I once helped a friend go through a box of old belongings. Inside were birthday cards his wife had given him over many years. She had passed away not long before that. As he looked through those cards, he said something that stayed with me. He said, "I don't need all of these to remember her." That moment reminded me of something important. Memories don't live inside objects. They live inside us. Sometimes keeping one meaningful item is enough to hold a lifetime of memories. Another thing that quietly shapes our homes is influence. These days we're surrounded by messages encouraging us to buy more things. Advertisements, online shopping, endless recommendations. Little by little, those messages shift what feels normal. We start believing we need things we never thought about before. But many of those things don't actually improve daily life. They simply take up space. And the more we appreciate what we already have, the less power those messages hold. Eventually, everything seems to come down to one quiet shift: letting less become the natural starting point. When something catches your attention, pause for a moment. Ask yourself a simple question: would this truly improve my everyday life? If the answer isn't clear, it's often better to leave it. Over time, that pause becomes automatic. And when that happens, something wonderful occurs. Clutter stops entering your life in the first place. When you step back and look at all of this together, something becomes clear. None of these ideas are really about cleaning. They're about awareness. They're about slowing down just enough to notice the choices we make each day. And when those choices change, the home changes with them. At some point in life, we begin to realize something important. One day, the things we own will belong to someone else. And sometimes the kindest thing we can do for our family is to leave them a little less to sort through. As we grow older, we start to understand something younger people often miss. A peaceful home isn't about perfection. It's about ease. A place where life feels lighter, where there's room to breathe, and where the things around us truly support the life we want to live. Now, I'm curious, which of these ideas feels most familiar in your own home? You might already be practicing some of them without even realizing it. If so, I'd love to hear about it. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy these quiet conversations about living well as we grow older, you're always welcome to join us again here, because sometimes the smallest changes create the greatest peace. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I'll see you in the next video.